Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Jethro Marks. Jethro, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So share a little bit about Jethro with our audience.
So some of you may hear I have a bit of a funny accent, and that's because I'm based in Sydney, Australia, and I run a company called The Nile, which is an online retail business. We've been around since dinosaurs roamed the earth. We started up around 2003, where some of your listeners probably even weren't born yet. And at the dawn of online retail, we probably missed the first wave. We were in the second wave, and at the age of 24. Showing my age a bit. Three of us with three computers and not much else decided to have a go at selling stuff on the internet. We had a highly sophisticated business model and plan. Anything we could find that would fit in a box that somebody in the world would buy would be what we would trade.
That is a sophisticated plan.
I'd like to say it's got a lot more developed since then. It probably hasn't. It's, fundamentally we're still doing the same thing. We might just be a little bit we might be slightly better at it than we were before, but ultimately it's the same idea. And so we ended up primarily focusing on the book business. At the time, that was a very straightforward way for us to sell because it didn't require a lot of explanation as to what the book was. It was a highly tradable commodity. It was a real catalog product. At the time, everybody said, "You're mad. Amazon owns the book business." It was 2003. It was like, okay, it made sense. And the way we described it, we said, okay, this is the total market. Amazon owns this, but on the side there are these two little slivers. And thankfully, it was a market that grew fast enough, and there was enough going on that we could create a business out of it.
So what was the unique product or the unique selling point of differentiating yourself from Amazon?
I think it's just one of these things where, you've got perfect market theorem in economics, and it just doesn't necessarily apply. It's in a big, fast-growing market. Our experience has been it isn't necessary to be number one. Sometimes people serendipitously find you. Sometimes we had product they didn't have. A lot of the time in the Australian market, people wanted to buy from a local seller. So there were just a number of kind of reasons where coupled together, put them all together, you actually end up with the ability to be able to build a business.
Yeah.
And we did that for about 8 years. We extended our supply chains into about 4 different countries to be able to get all access to all the books that were available. And after about 8 years, we sort of went back to our initial business plan, and we started adding other products. And the first one we did was DVDs. And today that seems like a ridiculous business to be in. Like, who's buying DVDs? But I'll tell you what, people still buy DVDs. And it's a great business for us in the sense that we've made the investment to be in it. There are no new entrants into the space, but it continues to sell. And there's going to be a market of people who just haven't migrated over to the on demand. And we'll see. Maybe it'll last a year, maybe it'll last 5, but it just keeps going.
Yeah, that's a great.
Baby products and toys. Baby products and toys are probably our biggest kind of growth categories at the moment that we like the most. We also do about 6 other categories, which are sort of smaller elements for us: health and beauty, sports and outdoor, etc. But the baby and toy are pretty much the main play with books for us at the moment. And so today we run a number of our own websites. We run thenile.com.au, one in New Zealand. We've got one called Tiny Fox, which is very specific to young parents. We also run some of the largest marketplace stores. So we have an eBay store, which last year ticked over about 1 million positive feedback. I believe that makes us the 3rd Australian company to have reached that accolade and the 64th globally. So we're very pleased with that. We've been participating on Amazon Australia since day one. So we've got a very strong multi-channel strategy. We're very we like the marketplaces. We like our own websites. We feel that there's 2 different distinct customers, and our philosophy is that where the customer wants to go and where they want to transact with us, we'll do it. So we're not trying to guide anybody. If they feel comfortable trading on eBay and pay with PayPal, we're there for them. If they want to come to our website and use Afterpay or some sort of buy now, pay later, we're there for them as well.
What a diverse strategy, and I kind of flipped the lever, to talk about business, but I just went right on by as you were doing your bio. I mean, no opportunity to talk about family or where you grew up or any of that. So I want to circle back, and I hate for your family to hate me on that, So tell us a little bit about the family.
No, absolutely. So I'm married with 2 kids. I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old is about to turn 4. We're about to have our first ISO party. I think for a 4-year-old's expectations are a little bit lower than a 7-year-old's in terms of the amount of people that should participate. So hopefully we'll have a bit of a Zoom connection and get a bit of the family, and it'll be enough. That's it's it. And they're lovely kids, but I get to see them a lot more now than I was before. And
That's true.
I've taken up my new career as a part-time home school teacer, which I'm finding to be a lot more challenging than my day job.
Yeah, it doesn't pay nearly as well either. Certainly doesn't pay as well.
It doesn't pay as well. It's a lot tougher. The
Hours
audience
are
is
longer.
a lot more. There's a lot more real-time feedback. It's not always a positive.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just interesting.
Your employees actually listen to you more, I'm sure. They listen to you better than at work than they do at home for sure. But I'm curious, where did the name come from? Where did the Nile? Was there an Egyptian origin there?
No, not at all. So we figured there's an Amazon, there's a Nile.
What a great strategy.
We said, well, the Nile is actually a longer river. So, all right, that bodes well.
Anything you can get in a box and put on the Nile, you'll sell.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. There wasn't much more thought put into it than that. And
I
it was available.
love the name.
It was available. That was the main thing, right?
Love the name. So it's interesting, your business model. Is it more of a drop shipping model, or do you actually have factories you carry inventory? What's kind of the backstory behind the Nile and other websites that you run?
Yeah, so we do a bit of everything. We don't drop ship very much. In our experience, we just tend to try and, in order to be able to create the best customer experience, we try and get as involved at all parts of the supply chain that we can. So, we warehouse a bunch of inventory. We're our own warehouses. We bring in some stock on a just-in-time basis, and we do drop ship a little bit where required. But even when we're drop shipping, we're getting involved in the shipping component, for example, to make sure that we can get a much better level of insight. Our experience over the years has just been when we've relied on drop shippers to take care of it entirely, it's been quite a negative experience for customers. And a lot of the work that we've been doing is trying to take the entire supply chain and sort of say, well, from end to end, how do we create a consistent experience for the customer? And a lot of the time that means bringing it a lot more in-house. Rather than relying entirely on third parties. It's not to say we don't work with drop shippers. It's just it's not always such a straightforward vanilla offering like you would fire and forget and send order and assume it's going to get taken care of. In our experience, that hasn't worked as well. But where it makes sense, where someone's got capability to say do pick and pack very cheaply, effectively, and quickly, it makes more sense to dispatch from their facility. But then potentially we might take care of the shipping component just to make sure that we've got it kind of tied into our overall system.
So do you, on the areas in the space that you're in, do you source products all the way back to the factory? Like do you source, back to Vietnam or China or?
Sorry, I missed the last part. Do we source from factories?
Yeah, do you source all the way back to the factory of origin? Like do you go back to China and work with, Chinese factories or Vietnam or Malaysia or wherever you might be sourcing your products?
Historically not. So our model has typically been to work with distributors, publishers in the markets that we operate in. So where we've got warehousing, and then we tend to source locally. We're experimenting with a few lines where it makes sense for us to go and source direct, but we haven't really. Interestingly, I'll segue to that in a second. But we haven't done a lot of our own brands to yet. Now, the interesting thing is, a segue to this is that. We have another part of our business where we provide an outsourced e-commerce service for other companies. So what we're actually doing is supporting other direct-to-consumer brands and brands that want to sell direct-to-consumer. We just don't do it ourselves. So we've got a facility where we provide everything from warehousing, fulfillment, customer service, building stores on building marketplaces, marketplace stores, operating the whole thing under the name of the brand, which is in essence the direct-to-consumer model that you were referencing.
Right.
We don't do it for our own brands.
It's more white label, like a white labeled service that you would do
Correct,
for somebody,
exactly.
like a white labeled supply chain type.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of examples would be a large multinational. We work with a number of large multinational brand owners, very strong brands, very strong marketing, have typically been a B2B play, and we facilitated them getting direct to consumer to be able to start selling their product direct and under the name of the brand. Another example would be a media company who's got a reasonably good amount of traffic, wants to monetize that, so we'll enable them by creating a store for them, and then we'll take care of that for them.
So traffic-wise, did I hear you correctly when you said eBay? You've had over 1 million reviews on eBay Australia?
1 million positive, yeah, probably more than that. But,
wow.
Yeah,
so how many transactions would that be? I mean, like not everyone leaves a review, so. Is it 20% people? Is it 50% of the people that leave reviews, or, how many transactions are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I would say it's probably circa 10-20% would be my guess.
Wow, that's a lot of transactions.
Yeah, it took us a while, but we got there.
Is that eBay Australia or eBay globally?
No, that's eBay Australia. So it's, yeah, we're really pleased with that outcome just because it's a relatively small market compared to the larger, like the US and UK. But it was primarily just Australia that we did that off.
But you do actually offer your market is global. It's not just limited to Australia, correct?
Yeah, we're a primarily Australian business, but we do sell to a global audience. So we do ship to a number of different countries. In the current environment, we've had to bring that back quite substantially because there's a lot less reliability around some of the shipping methods that we were using before. In Australia, one of the upshots of the way that the government has dealt with this problem is they have limited the number of people leaving and entering the country, and consequently, there's been a lot of planes going in and out. So international freight has gone up substantially.
Wow.
In terms of cost.
Yeah. Yeah, that would certainly be a deterrent to shipping globally. Yeah,
it's I guess it's one of the positives and negatives of being an island, right? When they decide to close the doors, that's it. It's shut. There's no one coming in or out.
I mean, I love the business model of, just the diversity behind your business model. And I wanted to kind of segue right here and just really talk about kind of current events and market we find ourselves in with the coronavirus. How has that affected business?
Yeah, so I think on balance, we've landed on the right side of this. We've been very lucky. We sell a lot of product that people want and need at the time. And, we're very happy that we're in a position to be able to help with a lot of the people who are having to stay at home. Books and toys and baby products and the like are just things that people need and can't necessarily get very easily. So we've been very fortunate in that we've ended up becoming busier than we were before. It's been a challenge in that we've had to remove, we've had to move all our staff to remote working in all countries. We've got an offshore site plus domestic. The warehousing's been put under a lot of constraints, which has made life interesting because we've had an increased volume, which we're very pleased with, but at the same time, a reduction in the ability to be able to process it.
Yes.
As we move people around. So that's made us become very creative, and the guys are working exceptionally long hours to try and make sure that we do get on top of things and satisfy all the customer demand that's out there. So look, on net, it's positive, and like I said, we're very happy that we've been in a position to help a lot of people, which has been good. But it has created some operational challenges. One of the positives that's come off this, I must say, is that the idea of remote working had always been something I'd thought about. I was like, would it be a good idea? Should we be remote? Like, maybe there's a model here that could fit. But I never had the courage to actually do it. I think it was one of those things that was a nice to have, but never actually happened. And one of the things that's occurred here is it's just forced us into that situation. And pleasingly, the results so far have been very positive. We have some staff in our offshore center who travel up to 2.5 hours to get to work each day. In Australia, everybody travels about an hour. Those people have been given anywhere between 2 to 5 hours a day back to do whatever they want with. And I'm really happy with that. Like, I think that's a great outcome for staff and for us. So I think the interesting question that I'm wondering is, once this all calms down, will we go back to an office environment on a permanent basis, or do we go with what I think it will be, where it'll be maybe people rotate in once or twice a week just to get the connection with each other, because we're definitely losing something by not being in the same room. But I don't see a situation arising where everybody's in the office every day. It just doesn't make sense to me anymore.
Hey, you're the boss. You can make that decision, right?
That's true.
I love that. You're talking
true.
like almost in third person, like, I wonder what we're going to do. And I'm sitting here thinking, I wonder what you're going to decide.
Well, I've got the customer to answer to. And so the question is, does it work well enough that the customer's going to be happy? And so the results so far have been good. So to me, that's the ultimate litmus test. So
how are you shipping things remotely? That to me would be the biggest difficulty you would have.
No, that can't be done. Like, you physically need to touch the product. So the warehouse just operates on a very, like I was saying earlier, like, it's got a slightly impaired performance. Basically, you've got to have social distancing. Everyone's in masks, everyone's in gloves. We're sanitizing and cleaning everything relentlessly. We're running split shifts. It's a different mode of operating completely to what we would have been doing beforehand.
What do you think business is going to look like on the backside of COVID-19?
What is business going to look like post-COVID?
Yes, exactly.
All right, cool. That's a really interesting question. So we're thinking about this from a couple of perspectives. There's sort of a few scenarios which we think are realistic. I think so one is that this goes on for a long, long period of time, which I think is unlikely. If that happens, then it's sort of just more of what we're seeing at the moment. The most likely outcome that we think is going to occur is that there will be a seismic shift in terms of the move online. So a whole bunch of people who previously weren't buying online are now buying online. A bunch of people who were buying online have accelerated their purchasing patterns. And so we think what's probably very likely is that the current patterns calm down a bit, but we end up at a higher base level than we were before, because the market size has increased. Anecdotally, a lot of people I know, including myself, are now just buying online, because who wants to go to the shops? Sometimes you can't, and a lot of the time it doesn't make sense to do so. So I think that will persist ongoing, even once this all calms down. And I think the shift, this will have become one of the biggest tailwinds for online retail that we've ever seen, possibly the biggest ever.
I love that answer. I mean, that is so, I can see it globally, see the exactly what you talked about, this tailwind, online globally. But real quick, as we're closing, because we're having internet issues here, but I love your backstory, and just hearing the story and the foundation and origin of the Nile. Is there anything that we haven't touched on today that you kind of want to wrap us up with today, and then tell people where to find you online?
I think, I would say, if there are you've obviously got an audience of people in the startup space. My assertion at the moment is that now is a great time to be starting a new business. There are pockets of demand that exist which didn't exist before. There is buying behavior that we've never seen before. I think there are a lot of companies that are struggling at the moment, and I feel really bad for them, whose models just haven't translated into this new environment. But I think if you're a startup and you can see a pocket of demand, there is definitely an opportunity now to get in and do something. I think I would urge any of the listeners who are thinking about doing something, now is a great time to do it. The cost of entry into a lot of spaces is really quite low, and it's there's just opportunities in every direction at the moment to get and do different things where incumbents aren't there at the moment. And I think that's a very interesting situation, where there are problems, there are opportunities. And I think it would be, my only urging to your entire audience would be, get out there and do it, because now's an amazing time to do something. And some of this behavior, like we said, will dissipate and disappear potentially, but I think there are certainly new intrinsic ways of doing things which aren't going to go away anytime soon.
Jethro, what a great way to wrap us up today, and just what an encouraging way to end in the midst of a global pandemic. But I just want to thank you again for just walking us through this and just offering your inspiration and your wisdom and just helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Jethro, thanks for joining us today.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.